Hello, everybody. How are you doing today? I certainly hope you're doing fine. Hope you're doing real good. I would like to take this opportunity to say thank you so much for tuning in today. I really appreciate it. And I graciously welcome you to another episode of TJ's Topics. I really appreciate you being with me. I consider it a joy, an honor, and a privilege to be able to come into your presence on any given occasion. And as we move through the month of August, this month is already half gone. I have an interesting topic for you, and I think it is one that would resonate with a lot of people, especially as we get underway with this brand new school year. Old people don't have the right to judge the youth. That's what I'm talking about. And it's something serious too. Old people do not have the right to judge the youth. And for the life of me, I simply do not know why they do that, but they do. And oftentimes they forget that they too were once young themselves and they made a ton of mistakes. But it's like somehow they have moved so far past that stage in life until they have reached this level of perfection and they don't do anything wrong anymore, or they've never done anything wrong to begin with. Let them tell it. Why is it that old people tend to look down on young people? And why are they oftentimes so critical of them? These are questions that we need to get the answers to if we can. Because, you know, I see so much unfairness in the way these older people treat the young people at times. And I know because I've been there. I've been looked down upon and talked down to by a lot of old people in the past, particularly those who I used to be in church with, because old church people are usually the worst ones. Older generations frequently look down on the youth due to the quote, kids these days effect. There's this psychological bias that they have towards the young people. Whereas, the world is steady changing, people are evolving, society goes through a metamorphosis, through every generation, every decade and every century that passes. And the older people have a problem with that because they think that things don't ever supposed to change. They're supposed to always remain the same. And then there's the difference in the way older people and younger people communicate. The youth have a different way of communicating from those who are older. And a lot of times these elderly people, they just can't grasp what these young people are talking about. And that offends them. I mean, that really works their nerves. Well, anyway, it is what it is. Now, there are key psychological drivers behind all of this, beginning with number one, selective memory and projection. Older individuals often forget their own youthful mistakes. They forget about when they used to run the streets, when they used to stay out all night long and party, drink, smoke, cuss, and act a fool, when they were out here screwing everything with legs on it and getting pregnant by strangers. And that's how you end up with these all these babies in these families, and they don't know who their fathers are. They did all that, and they want to get on the young people for doing it. They forget about their own mistakes. Number two, changing norms and identity protection. Because the world evolves at such a rapid pace, older generations may feel insecure when their once established cultural values shift. See, that's a huge problem with older people. You know, they think that how it was during the time when they were young is the way it needs to be now. And sadly, they're mistaken. That is not the case. For example, you take the baby boomer generation, those who were born between the years of 1946 and 1964. Well, they grew up with a certain mindset, a certain type of upbringing. They were handed certain beliefs, certain types of information on things, and they gravitated towards that. And so you run into them now, and that's all they know mostly, failing to realize that this is not 1946 anymore. We're not in that time frame anymore from 1946 to 64. Things have changed drastically since that time and since that era. So they need to get over it because I, for one, would not want to live back there again. If I had ever lived through that time, the world doesn't need to revert back to that era in time for multiple reasons, of which I don't have time to explain in today's episode. Number three, and now we're talking about cultural and economic shifts. Emotional expressions versus repression. Emotional expression versus repression. Older generations were taught to repress their struggles, whereas younger people tend to be more emotionally expressive and communicative. And that's one thing that I noticed when I was growing up. They told us that it's wrong to ask questions about certain things, especially when it comes to religion. It's wrong to question God. Now, this came from the generation that came before me. I'm Generation X, who was born between 1965 and 1980. Well, if you were raised by a baby boomer parent, then 9 times out of 10, you were told that you shouldn't be asking too many questions about anything because they didn't have the answer to them, for one. And number two, it's wrong to question authority, challenging them in their beliefs and their stance on things. The positions that they took on various issues, they considered that as being defiant. So they told us to shut up. And I know because I've been there. And believe me, it hurts a child when they're not able to express themselves and learn more about the world in which they live, all because of these old, outdated paradigms. I'm telling you, it can do a child serious damage, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Number four, unfair traditional benchmarks. Older adults often judge young people using traditional milestones like homeownership, marriage, and corporate loyalty. They expect you to be married by a certain age. They expect you to be a homeowner by a certain age and to have reached a certain level of growth and development in terms of careers, but the way the world is now and the way this economy is in 2026, sometimes it's just not possible. Therefore, people just have to do the best they can. These young people, they're trying to make it out here. Now you got these older people who have enjoyed a lifetime of success on the job and had long marriages and stuff like that. Been married for 30 and 40 and 50 years. Well, hell, don't nobody hardly want to be with people that long now. I mean, because the longer you're with a person and the more you see in that person that's not good, the more regrets you're going to have ever getting involved with them in the first place. And finally, number five, The amplification of social media, and this is something that a lot of older people definitely don't understand. Digital platforms allow everyone's criticisms and concerns to be heard. These platforms like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, which is now X, and others. People have a way of expressing their views, their thoughts and opinions. Whereas back in the 1970s, 80s, and 90s, we didn't have. In the 1960s, they definitely didn't have, except, unless they got involved in some kind of movement, with a bullhorn. And so see how times have changed? Things are just not the same anymore. And sadly, these older people, they have a hard time accepting that. Well, they may as well accept it, because we're not going back. We are moving forward. And unless they're willing to move forward with us, unfortunately, they will be left behind. So that concludes this conversation here today on the topic: old people don't have the right to judge the youth. They really don't. So they forget the fact that they were young once too. And they made their mistakes, but they're not perfect. They weren't then, and they're certainly not now. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of TJ's Topics. I apologize for the lengthiness in this conversation, but these were some things that needed to be addressed. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and share with whoever you wish. And I certainly be grateful for it. Look forward to seeing you again next time, okay? This is Taryn Jerome Harris, reminding you that every round goes higher and higher. Be blessed, I tell you. Have a good day.